Unfortunately, my mother died very soon, 5 months after I was born. And my father, who was in the Estonian military as an officer at that time, I believe he was a captain, sent me to be raised by his parents. Grandfather and grandmother spoke German, and but he also spoke very good Estonian, but still he considered himself a German, basically. And when in 1939 Hitler called all the Baltic Germans back to the fatherland, all of my father's family, except he, went to Germany. There was, of course, already the threat of the Soviet Union occupying Estonia, so that was a big reason why so many people left. My father could have gone because he had basically of German extraction, but he felt that as a military officer he could not abandon his troops, and so he stayed. My father married a woman that had known my birth mother, and they both had worked in Eesti Pank, the Estonian state bank. When the war started, the Estonian units were taken to Russia to fight the Germans, and my father was arrested in Velukia Luki area in Russia, and accused of inciting his men to fire on the Russian troops. He was exonerated. I was able to read in the Estonian archives his trial, and however, they brought up the fact that he had been in the Estonian Independence War, and that was the reason that he was sentenced to 15 years of hard labor in Siberia and sent there, and we found out later that he died fairly shortly, I think in the early 1942. Whether he was shot there or died of disease or whatever, but anyway, I think he lasted less than a year. The big bombing of Tallinn, our apartment building burned down. So we had gone into a air raid shelter in the Estonian bank, and we were in the basement and survived with just a couple suitcases of clothes. So our home was gone. We were sure that if we stayed, that we would be on the blacklist and deported probably immediately or very soon, because of my father's background, my mother's high position in the bank, and so on. My mother was, being in a fairly high position, was sent by the German authorities to Germany with the documents of the Eesti Pank, Estonian State Bank. We got preference. We left about 10 days before the Russian troops reached Tallinn. I think it was like the 13th of September in 1944, and we got on a German ship and went down the Baltic. I fled together with my stepmother, her mother, then my step-grandmother, and her sister, my step aunt. And so we, all four of us, moved to Augsburg to the DP camp. We lived in a small hotel. It was run by two old ladies who were convinced Nazis, and they would upbraid us because we had two light bulbs in a fairly large room, and they said we should only have one because we had to save for the eventual win of Nazi Germany. They were still convinced that Hitler and the Nazis were going to survive and win the war. We decided that we had to get away. You know, we had fled Estonia, and we didn't want to get caught by the Russians in Germany. So there was a rumor that Switzerland was going to let non-German refugees into Switzerland. Well, so we started, packed our bags and started taking trains towards Switzerland. And of course, there was just a rumor. One later found out that Switzerland was very ruthless. Even turned Jews that had managed to get into Switzerland, turned them back to the Nazis. So anyway, we got to southern Germany near the Swiss border and stayed in a small town. And this is where the war ended. The French troops came into that area. So I was able to complete 5 years of high school, gymnasium, in the camp. I graduated. It was one of the last students because people started to emigrate. You had to have a sponsor in the United States so that when you arrived here that you wouldn't become a ward of the state. I mean, you had to have somebody who would take care of you. We had some friends who had arrived in the U.S. same way on a troop ship, but about 6 or 8 months earlier. And they already had established themselves and gotten jobs in New York, and they accepted them as sponsors. It was a rather rough crossing. It was in late January. Everybody was seasick. It was a miserable time, but you know. And we arrived in New York harbor, saw the Statue of Liberty, and were welcomed, and we were handed the green card. You know, people now have to wait a long time, but we were actually, there was a special congressional quota. It was immigration quota was enacted so that all these DPs were handed the green card right away. And on the ship there were Estonians, Latvians, Russians, Jews. It was quite a conglomeration of all different nationalities.